It's hard not to be a fan of the Quake series at this point. id Software's long-running first-person shooter franchise has served as a great technology showcase for the latest and greatest in PC hardware, but first and foremost, it's been a great series of exciting action games both online and off. Quake 4 marks the first time that the game hasn't appeared on an all-new engine. Instead, Quake 4 runs on the same technology that built Doom 3. It's also the first time that the game hasn't been developed by id, who takes an executive producer credit this time around, leaving the heavy lifting to Raven Software, a group of talented first-person shooter developers in their own right. The resulting product is an amazing-looking game with an exciting single-player campaign. The multiplayer is patterned after Quake 3 Arena, though, which is still fun, but it isn't quite the leap forward that you're used to seeing from the series' online play. The single-player campaign takes place immediately after the conclusion of Quake 2. In case you don't remember, that's the one where the nameless Space Marine made his way from one end of the planet Stragos to the other, blowing a hole in anything that gets in his way. At the end, he defeats the enemy leader, known as the Macron. It was thought that this would put a stop to the enemy efforts, but really, it's only just thrown them for a loop. In Quake 4, you play as Matthew Kane, a Space Marine assigned to Rhino Squadron. With the Macron assumed dead, you're flying in there to mop up the rest of the enemy forces and put a stop to this whole human versus Strog thing once and for all. But, of course, things won't be so easy for you. Rhino's dropship gets blasted out of the sky, wiping out a lot of its men. You're left for dead, but manage to pick yourself up out of the muck, rendezvous with your squad, and get back into your mission of taking down as many Strog as you possibly can. The single-player campaign should take most players somewhere between 10 and 15 hours, depending on how handy you are with the weapons you're given. It's straightforward, but that doesn't mean it's simple. It means that the game has a focus. That focus is on combat, shooting stuff up with a variety of fun-to-fire weapons. It also feels modern, unlike the throwback feel that Doom 3 was going for. There's a lot more stuff to shoot in Quake 4, which adds to the excitement. The plot is just deep enough to keep you interested in your next objective. You'll make your way through waste systems, technology centers, and lots of other types of terrain as you go, and you'll move in a variety of ways thanks to the inclusion of a couple of vehicle levels. You'll pilot a hover tank, a mech walker, and man a gun for a shooting gallery sequence. The vehicle stuff is easy, but it breaks up the action pretty well. You'll also occasionally roll with a posse of other Marines. The AI-controlled shooters do their job reasonably well and manage to hit their target a lot more often than you're probably used to seeing from weapons not under your direct control. You'll collect a variety of weapons as you play. For the most part, you can rely on your trusty machine gun. It does a decent amount of damage, and as a bonus, it has a flashlight mounted on it. But over time, you'll add deadlier weapons to your arsenal. If you've been playing the Quake games over the years, they'll all look pretty familiar to you. You'll get a shotgun, a grenade launcher, a nail gun, a rocket launcher, a rail gun, the hyper blaster, and so on. Also, you'll come across weapon upgrades as you progress through the story. These add some additional tactical considerations to your weapon selection. That flashlight is nice, but the upgraded nail gun can fire homing shots, and the upgraded lightning gun can chain lightning off of your target to also hit additional nearby enemies. This makes most of the weapons useful in different scenarios. While the single player has a lot going for it, the multiplayer feels like it fell out of some kind of time warp. That's because the game's developers are essentially trying to duplicate the multiplayer from Quake 3. That's a noble goal in some respects. Quake 3's multiplayer provided some of the best deathmatch I've ever played, but 6 years later, it's a little bit stale. You get the same basic modes you'd expect to see: deathmatch, team deathmatch, a one-on-one tournament mode, and 2 slight variants on capture the flag. You'll see a few maps from previous Quake games in there, which is nice for scratching that nostalgic itch, but seeing as how Quake 3 still runs on modern machines, it's tough to feel nostalgic for it at this point. Plus, parts of the multiplayer just don't feel quite right when compared to Quake 3. If you're just looking for Quake 3's gameplay with higher system requirements and better-looking graphics, you've come to the right place. But that's not exactly impressive in this day and age. The star of the show is the game's graphics. While Quake 4 isn't attempting to spook you by having enemies constantly jump out from the darkness, the game does darkness and shadows very well. This lends the game an ominous feel that makes you wonder what exactly the Strog are using all of this crazy biomechanical machinery for. That said, the game has system requirements that look reasonable, but keep in mind that if you barely beat that mark, you'll have to turn down the detail and run at a lower resolution. If you're on a pretty stout machine, you'll be able to enjoy the game's visuals a lot more. Overall, Quake 4 combines an exciting single-player campaign with multiplayer that's fun on its own, but taken contextually, it's been done better before. All in all, though, it's a great game that first-person shooter fans should definitely enjoy.